My fellow Americans,
let's talk about the situation at the border. We've seen a huge surge in migrants crossing the border since January. The number of children in custody higher than it was than its 2019 peak during the Trump administration. Your colleague Veronica Escobar of Texas called the conditions there unacceptable. She was there on Friday. Is she right? What more must be done?
Actually, the facts are these. There are more children, about 600-700 more children, unaccompanied children, coming over the border. This is a humanitarian challenge to all of us. What the administration has inherited is a broken system at the border, and they are working to correct that in the children's interest. I'm so pleased that the president, as a temporary measure, has sent FEMA to the border in order to help facilitate the children going from one 72-hour issue into where they are cared for as they are transferred into family homes or homes that are safe for them to be.
And I have to confess, I knew nothing about their suffering until 2021, when I volunteered to help the Biden administration with the crisis at the southern border. As part of Operation Artemis, I was deployed to the Pomona Fairplex Emergency Intake Site in California to help HHS, Office of Refugee Resettlement, reunite children with sponsors in the United States. I thought I was going to help place children in loving homes. Instead, I discovered that children are being trafficked through a sophisticated network that begins with recruiting in home country, smuggling to the U.S. border, and ends when ORR delivers a child to a sponsor. Some sponsors are criminals and traffickers and members of transnational criminal organizations. Some sponsors view children as commodities and assets to be used for earning income. This is why we are witnessing an explosion of labor trafficking. Now, whether it's intentional or not, it could be argued that the United States government has become the middleman in a large-scale, multi-billion-dollar child trafficking operation that is run by bad actors seeking to profit off of the lives of children.
Russia said once they take Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. Those are NATO countries. That puts America at war. This is about preventing war. It's always been about preventing war. My husband is a combat veteran. He's deployed now. The last thing I want him or any of his military brothers and sisters to do is to go to war.
But I think it is time to give the Ukrainians more help hitting these bases inside Russia.
One of the reasons that the administration has hesitated is because they believe it will escalate things even further with Russia pull the U.S. further in. Why not? Why do you think that's a good idea?
Because it's Russia that has escalated this war. Russia has learned how to pull its forces back out of the range where we have allowed Ukraine to use our weapons and get our support.
American media outlets have spoken to scores
of people from Ukraine, and they've done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind that kills people. At the same time, our politicians and media outlets have been doing this, promoting a foreign leader like he's a new consumer brand. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin. Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong. Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it because we are Americans too.
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III.
A U.S. official has confirmed to CBS News President Biden has given authorization for Kyiv to use U.S.-supplied long-range weapons to strike deep into Russian territory.
I'm sitting here with my father. I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father. Sounds like a shakedown, doesn't it, Director?
I'm not going to get into commenting on that.
You seem deeply uncurious about it, don't you? Almost suspiciously uncurious. Are you protecting the Bidens?
Absolutely not. The FBI does not and has no interest in
You won't answer the question about whether or not that's a shakedown, and everybody knows why you won't answer it. Because to the millions of people who will see this, they know it is. And your inability to acknowledge that is deeply revealing about you.
British police came into the embassy and arrested.
After a long flight from the UK, Julian Assange's day began on the island of Saipan, a tiny territory chosen because it's the closest US court to Australia. This normally quiet courthouse, swarming with reporters, as the WikiLeaks founder arrived flanked by former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd.
Individual used an AR-15 in order to act out his assassination attempt. An AR-15 has a range of about 400 to 600 yards. My question Why is the Secret Service protective perimeter shorter than one of the most popular semi-automatic weapons in the United States?
There are a number of weapons out there with a number of ranges. Again, an advance was completed. The determination of the perimeter, I'm not going to speak to specifics, but there are a number of factors that are taken into account when we determine our perimeter. Some of it has to do with terrain, some of it has to do with buildings, some of it has to do with assets and resources that are available.
What I'm hearing is that a perimeter was not established outdoors in an outdoor venue that would prevent an AR-15, which is one of the most common weapons used in mass shootings, from being able to be within the range of Secret Service protection.
Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th, yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
So what is the threat to democracy? People on both sides, people in power, saying out loud that they want to control what you get to hear and see. It is real, it is a threat, and it is happening and growing. And I'll tell you what, punishing thought is on the agenda. And I just heard it from someone who's not a kook, not Alex Jones, not Tucker Carlson, one of the most sober and intelligent politicians of our time, Hillary Rodham Clinton.
I think it's important to indict the Russians, just as Mueller indicted a lot of Russians who were engaged in direct election interference and boosting Trump back in 2016. But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrent.
Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg admitted that the Biden administration repeatedly pressured Meta to censor content, including information about Hunter Biden, and Zuck admitted that he also regrets complying with these demands. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Representative Jim Jordan, Zuck writes, quote, "The FBI warned us about a potential Russian disinformation operation about the Biden family and Burisma in the lead up to the 2020 election. That fall, when we saw a New York Post story reporting on Joe Biden's family, we sent that story to fact checkers for review and temporarily demoted it."
You know, you do some tweets that seem to be, or at least give support to some who would call others conspiracy theories.
Well, yes, but I mean, honestly, you know, some of these conspiracy theories have turned out to be true.
Which ones?
Well, like the Hunter Biden laptop.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am in awe of Ms. Jankowicz. When the department picked her, did it know that she had said that Mr. Hunter Biden's laptop is Russian disinformation? Did it know that she had vouched for the veracity of the Steele dossier?
Senator, let me repeat myself and add an additional fact. One, we do not discuss internal hiring processes.
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech.
To be a conspiracy theorist is to have been right all along, despite the efforts of the paid-for liars. And it's also to be demonstrably well ahead of the gullible, still believing in smoke and mirrors. Conspiracy theorist was first used by the CIA to shut down those who doubted the official line about the murder of John F. Kennedy, that fishy old tale about a lone shooter and a magic bullet, and then that lone shooter being shot by another lone shooter before he could talk. That was in the 1960s, and from then, the label conspiracy theorist worked for decades as the means to make thinking people too scared to speak when they smelt a rat. Let 2024 be the year of clearing out the rubbish, the trash, the long overdue year when the past or sell-by date labels, conspiracy theorist among them, are cast into the dustbin of history.
And wake up, everybody. Welcome in on this Thursday to Redacted. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
And on this show, we tend to cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores. A reminder that today, after our normal live show, it's all free. At the end of the show, we're going to just say goodbye to our normal audience and go over to Rumble Premium. We're going to hang out on our Thursday Rumble Premium Hangout. We'll just kind of chit-chat and hang out and have fun. So, again, that's after today's main live show. Just go to rumble.com/redacted. And you actually get, I think, a discount on their Rumble Premium subscription as well. So,
also worth remembering that this is the eve of a holiday weekend, and so we will be off on Monday. So we're so glad you're joining us now. We will have content throughout the weekend, so please stay subscribed to our show. Hit that little bell notification so you don't miss anything when it goes live. But there will be no live show on Monday, and we hope you have wonderful plans, that you stay safe and sober.
And we've got a lot of news to get to here on your Thursday. We're going to talk about these assassinations of these two Israeli diplomats in Washington, D.C. Now, of course, you knew the narratives would explode online. Both sides, the lines are being drawn. And a Republican congressman just went on Fox News and called for the nuclear bomb to go off in Gaza as the only way to stop all of this. So drop nukes on Gaza. That's what we're doing. So we're going to talk about all of that and how this is really spiraling out of control. Could this be a false flag attack in order to rally support for a war in Iran? We're going to unpack all of those parts.
Plus, the government knew about the risks of myocarditis. They knew how to prevent it and how to screen for it and how to warn people who might have had it, and they did none of that. This new bombshell report out of the Senate is extremely upsetting. We're going to show you data that shows exactly what could have happened if they had warned people. But instead, they knew this and said, that's okay, go out. You might have a heart attack. It's fine. And so it's extremely upsetting. I'm going to show you this data, and you are going to punch your screen.
Don't punch your screen.
Yeah, but don't do that, and don't direct it at me. Let's all collectively get mad together. I'm mad about it.
We're also going to talk about the scandal of, the greatest scandal in American presidential history, which was the Biden presidency being run not by President Biden, but basically unelected officials. We'll talk about all of that and more as today's show kicks off. So thank you guys so much for subscribing and being here and being part of our show. Hey, tonight, our team, over the years, we've partnered with our friends at Sedera Wealth, and Natalie and I, we had this strategy back in the day where we were deep in debt. Okay, that's no secret. We had a lot of debt. We didn't have the income coming in, and we needed a better plan. So we actually partnered with our friends over at Sedera Wealth to make one, actually start investing in real estate. Together, we created a strategy that helped us become financially free in less than 5 years. And we've helped a lot of people do that too. So tonight, we're having a special webinar, and Josh from our team from Sedera Wealth is going to be joining us on this special webinar tonight. So many people have been asking about how they can start getting invested in real estate. So tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, that's how you can sign up and go to this webinar. Let me tell you where that link is. We're going to have it in the description below, so you can actually go to that link. Do we have the actual link? I guess we should have had that link right here on the screen, but I guess we don't have it. But anyway, we'll have a link in the, I guess we already have the link in the description. So I just want to make sure it's in there. Okay. Go to redacted.inc/invest. You can also check it there. So again, we'll have the link in the description so people can sign up as well. All right.
Well, a new government report accuses the U.S. government, meaning the CDC, the FDA, and Health and Human Services, of delaying or suppressing warnings about myocarditis or other adverse events following the mRNA COVID vaccine, especially in young people. Now, we're going to show you how, if they had warned people, they could have saved lives and prevented cardiac events. This is now irrefutable, and you should be mad as snakes about it. So let's dive in and see what there is to see. This comes from Senator Ron Johnson's Subcommittee on Investigations. It's called Failure to Warn: How Federal Agencies Downplayed the Risk of Myocarditis and Other Adverse Events Following COVID-19 Vaccinations, and it is damning. We should point out we only know about this because President Trump took office, because Senator Johnson had subpoenaed these emails repeatedly during the Biden administration and was put off. When President Trump took office in January of 2025, he was handing this very smoking gun, and he took it from there. He knew all of this was there. It was just a matter of seeing the emails. Now, here's why this is terrible. The U.S. government and the Israeli government both knew that the vaccination was associated with myocarditis in young people, particularly boys. And instead of warning the public or instigating a protocol to screen for it, they fooled around on emails and then did nothing that they could have stopped it. Now, who do you think, Clayton, if you say, who's the most active population of humans? When in life, who is the most active? Like in sports and things like that?
Probably like 14, 15, 16-year-old boys.
Yeah. Adolescent and young men, right?
Yeah.
This is the population that was having myocarditis, and they could have screened them and told them don't exercise for a while. But they let this active population out there in the world at risk. They did not notify the American public. In fact, they only notified Pfizer and Moderna. They gave them a heads up. And even worse, like they could have said, you could get hurt. Here, let's screen for this. But instead, they just kind of faffed about on email. Now, you can help people with myocarditis. This is actively something you could do about it. We learned this from this 2023 study out of a university in Switzerland. It showed that people who were given the vaccine were then screened for myocarditis following the vaccination. You do this by searching for what's called a troponin in the blood. When they did find it, they warned those people. And they said, hey, you need to rest for the next couple of days because you have heart inflammation. If you don't, you can have a cardiac event. So let's say for the next week, you don't do exercise. When they did that, everyone was fine. Nobody had a cardiac event. Nobody collapsed. Listen to Dr. John Campbell explain this. This was from when the study was published in 2023.
So what they did, if people had raised troponins at 3 days after the booster, they said, look, you've got raised troponins after 3 days. Therefore, let's get a repeat blood test. Therefore, let's get a 12-lead ECG or other cardiological investigations as the cardiologists deem fit. Take rest. Do not exercise, because if you've got myocarditis and you just rest for a few days, good chance it'll just go away, get better. If you go running or training, there's a good chance. Not a good chance, but there's a chance you can go into a ventricular fibrillation, into a full cardiac arrest. So the fact that these people were warned is so important. Probably not happening where you are, certainly not happening where I am.
Okay, so in 2023, these scientists discovered this in Switzerland. Unfortunately, our own government knew that in 2021 and decided not to warn these people. So these people had a risk of myocarditis. They didn't screen for it, and they did not warn them. And then we saw evidence after evidence of young men collapsing on sports field. Now, the CDC, in fact, had drafted language in public warning the public about this. And here is the CDC official, Dr. Dimitri Deskalaskis, saying, let's remove this. I don't think we need it. And in fact, he was the director at the time of the Division of HIV and AIDS Prevention. Why is he ringing in? Who the hell knows? And he's saying, no, I think that we should walk back this sentence, which we now know could have prevented attacks. The sentence was, and I'm sorry, it's a kind of a crap screenshot, but it's from the report saying, due to concerns for sudden cardiac events while the heart recovers, consider restricting patients with myocarditis from rigorous activity like competitive sports for at least 3 months until cleared by a healthcare professional. How many of these people could have had this warning and they decided it was unnecessary? And then we saw when this protocol was instigated in Switzerland, it saved it saved people's lives. In fact, here's another draft of the Health Alert Network that, again, the CDC thought they should send out, warning to get troponin tests. They never published it. Instead, they talked themselves out of it with emails like this, like, oh, we're here deciding about the pros and cons of whether we should issue this. And the cons are that we don't want to appear alarmist.
I mean, okay, so wait a minute. That to me could be the most damning part of all of this, which is, okay, you've already notified Pfizer and Moderna of the risks of this.
Yes.
We know this, right?
Yes.
So you've notified them about it. So then these people are presumably taking the shot. I mean, that's bad enough that you knew about it and you're still allowing them to take it. But then you also know that there's post-vaccine treatment, which can help if there is myocarditis. And you're also choosing then not to tell parents about this treatment option that can help them if they do get myocarditis?
They chose not to. They could have said, let's screen for troponins if you're in this at-risk population, which is mostly young people, young men. If we see the troponins, you don't exercise for a while. Instead, they did not warn them. They vaccinated young people. They mandated it in most colleges and then let college athletes collapse on the field. We saw that happening. We know it happened. They chose not to warn about it. They only warned Pfizer and Moderna and said, hey, are we picking this up in our VAERS system, which is the adverse events system? Should we follow this? Why don't you let us know when you see this? Because again, doctors are not required to report adverse events. Neither are hospitals. Only the vaccine makers themselves are required. And how do they even know? Because they don't administer the vaccines. What were you going to say, David?
Well, I was going to say, and we all know that they tried to hide their own documentation of any adverse reactions for 75 years. But fortunately, that judge opened it up in Texas. But they didn't want us to know any of the adverse reactions.
Right. But this is showing us they knew that they could actually do something about it and prevent. So if you know somebody.
That's criminal negligence.
Yes, I would say it is. I think that.
Right. Because they keep calling it a misstep. Oh, it was a misstep. No, it's not. It's not a misstep. It's criminal negligence.
I mean,
right. Go ahead, Philip.
I mean, it sounds like they're in a building. They see a fire. They don't want to pull the fire alarm because they don't want to appear alarmist. So what they do is they just notify the building owner, "Hey, there's a fire in your building. If you want to do something about it." And then
you probably don't want to alarm the people in the building. Yeah, you probably don't even want to tell the people in the building.
Yeah. You don't tell people in the building.
If you pull the fire alarm, you're an alarmist.
And then all those people end up dying in the building, and that's just a misstep.
Right.
You know, it's a misstep. We should have, I don't know.
I'm sure. How would you feel if you or someone you loved had an incidence of myocarditis, did collapse during athletic activity, and know that the U.S. government knew that this was a risk and decided not to warn you about it? When all they had to do was tell you, this might be a risk, so rest. Screen your troponins and rest. How about that? You could have taken a few weeks off and not had a heart attack. How would you feel knowing that the government decided not to warn?
Well, not only that, but they gaslit people into thinking that they were stupid for thinking this was going on. That this was a conspiracy theory. This wasn't really happening. Yeah.
That's the third level, right? That's the third level because to me, and also they even took it to a fourth level. So, right, number one, they collaborated with Pfizer and Moderna. They told them they had this issue.
Yes, which they already knew in their clinical trials.
So they knew.
Not news to
they
them.
knew and they knew. The government knew and they knew. The big pharma. Then they had the post-shot treatment options that they kept from the American people. Didn't tell them that they could, watch your troponins and rest, right? So they kept that from them. Mm-hmm. The third level is exactly what Philip was talking about. They also then collaborated with the mainstream media to basically gaslight and call anyone like us a conspiracy theorist or block shows, ban shows, canceled doctors like Peter McCullough, Peter Corey, Robert Malone, and others who were noticing this myocarditis at the very beginning.
Right. And imagine had they issued this warning, then the media would have picked it up in this like, but it's still okay, kind of, well, we have to report on this, but it's still fine. The rest of us would have continued to research that, right? We didn't have that heads up in 2021. We only had it from the clinical trials and people who reported that who were called crazy. Right. And so, again, I don't need to tell you, you saw on social media, athlete after athlete collapsing, healthy people post-vaccination. So now we know this was real. They chose not to warn against it. So these doctors, especially the one that I showed you, who said, let's not send this, let's strike this from the warning, who then decided not to send the warning at all, they should lose their license, their medical license, permanent revocation, not just temporary, not just a punishment. They should be delicensed. And they should face charges for criminal behavior, malpractice, and ethical violations. Absolutely, that should happen. I don't think I've ever been this sure about anything until I've seen this. And so let me know what you think.
And also
Senator Ron Johnson, he can only do so much. He can only tell us, right? So now it's the Justice Department that needs to do that. Now this is the states. The state attorneys general needs to do something about this. It's not on us.
Oh, and Congress. Sorry to interrupt, David, but we need Congress to pass a law that enables us to actually sue these drug manufacturers over these vaccines. It's the only thing in America you can't sue for. Is the vaccines.
Right. We can't do anything other than just be outraged at this point until we have our lawmakers do something for us.
They're indemnified.
That's exactly what I was going to add, Clayton, to your list, like that they were immune from any punitive, like that you couldn't sue them over it. I was going to add that to your number 4 or 5 on your list.
Right, but
I think that's the only thing in America you can't sue for. Isn't that amazing? America's like the sue happiest country in the world. And actually, I went through a roller coaster of emotions about that over the years. Like, oh, it's sue happy. We shouldn't do that. We shouldn't do that. And then I've actually come around on that because that's one way you can actually compel these companies to actually do right by people.
No, I believe we litigate our values. I think that we need the court system for this. But in this case, sure, Pfizer and Moderna have immunity. Do the CDC? Does the FDA? They purposely did not warn young boys who were getting the vaccination of these risks or screen them after when they drafted it. So how about who's going to sue the CDC, right? I don't know. Is there a case there? I have no idea.
The doctors must too, because I didn't see a bunch of lawsuits at doctors either that were giving people wrong information. Like, did you see a bunch of lawsuits for doctors? I didn't.
I don't know about. Yeah, that's true. I haven't really heard about malpractice lawsuits for negligence. Like if you knew that this was the case, I don't know. I mean, you had people who get in deep trouble, like Dr. Peter McCullough, Peter Corey, Robert Malone, who were seeing myocarditis. They were telling people to avoid this. They were telling them, here's the protocols with ivermectin and other things. And they were canceled. They lost their jobs.
I'm telling you right now, if I had a high school athlete who collapsed because of myocarditis, and the government purposely did not warn my son, I would be. Someone in the chat says class action. I would be looking into this. Yeah. Absolutely, I would.
All right,
or if I was that high school athlete myself, or college athlete, or would have anybody under 30, right?
Yeah.
Actually, any athlete who anybody who went to the gym.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tone it down now.
Okay, well, let us know in the comments about this. What do you think and where do you stand on this? Please weigh in. Thank you guys for subscribing. Thank you guys for being here. We got a lot more news to get to here on your Thursday. We're going to talk about the MAHA pesticide plan because pesticides, harmful toxic chemicals, is at the heart of the latest MAHA battle. Will RFK Jr. and HHS kind of offer protection for these pesticide companies, or will they listen to the nearly 360 MAHA leaders and organizers who just sent a letter to RFK demanding that he stand firm against all of these toxic chemicals in our food supply? We're going to speak to a doctor next who's knee-deep in this fight right now against all these pesticides in the United States of America. But first,
we want to tell you about Stamps.com, because if you, like me, love stationery and sending things and logistics and postage, you like having a well-stocked office, this stuff gets me excited, then you need to have an account at Stamps.com, because they do more than just small business mailings. They can handle all of your mailing and shipping needs whenever and wherever, so you don't just go to the post office with a package like a chump without your postage already pre-printed without your discounted rates. You just go and drop it all off because everything's done for you. And you have access to USPS and UPS services that you need to run your business right from your computer 24/7. No lines, no traffic, no waiting. And in fact, they provide you the flexibility of your all-in-one mailing and shipping solution. Have you ever gone into the post office and then seen a long line and there was nothing you could do but wait? Yeah, that's not you. You're not going to do that anymore. All you need is a printer and a computer. They even send you a free scale, and you get access to discounted rates, up to 88% off USPS and UPS. So again, check them out at stamps.com/redacted. You'll get a 4-week trial plus free postage plus that free digital scale, which is exciting. The kids love to put their little dolls and things on it to have that scale. I find that very exciting. So again, get a free trial plus free postage. Go to stamps.com/redacted. One more time, that's stamps.com/redacted.
All right. Well, we got more news to get to here on your Thursday. We're just waiting for our next guest, Dr. Kendra Klein. She's supposed to be joining us here, and hopefully she didn't get held up. Oh, she's in now. All right. She's in. She's ready to go. Okay, good. Just never know. Okay. All right. Well, pesticides, harmful toxic chemicals in our soil right now is at the heart of the latest MAHA battle. 360 MAHA leaders and organizers, including over 30 farmers, sent a letter to HHS Secretary Robert Kennedy urging him to stand firm in the face of demands from the pesticide industry to take pesticides off the MAHA Commission agenda. Here is that letter. In defense of accountability and health, and it goes through this entire letter. The toxic chemical companies want RFK to look the other way, basically. But in their letter, they say, quote, real food security cannot be built on toxic chemicals. A food system reliant on synthetic insecticides and herbicides weakens our soil, harms pollinators, and compromises long-term resilience. Across the country, organic and other truly regenerative farmers are demonstrating every day that we can produce abundant and health-supporting food without sacrificing ecological or human well-being. Dr. Kendra Klein, the alliteration was killing me, is Deputy Director of Science at Friends of the Earth and has been fighting this battle and pushing HHS to stand firm against pesticides. Dr. Klein, great to see you here on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
So why should HHS listen to this? Why should RFK Jr. stand firm against these pesticides?
Well, we're doing this on a great day because the MAHA Commission, Make America Healthy Again Commission, just this morning released a report that gives an indication of whether or not they're going to stand strong on what that letter that you just read is asking them to do. As a person who is deeply in the weeds on the science on pesticides and harm to our health, and just to give you a sense of why I do this work, because it's so aligned with the momentum we're seeing here behind the MAHA movement. For me, my mom had breast cancer twice. I started asking questions, as so many of us do when we have a family member who's sick or we're struggling, about why we're sick and what we can do. And we know that the list of health harms associated with pesticide exposure is very long. Increased risk of childhood cancers, cancers as we age, neurodevelopmental problems. So people are talking about rising rates of ADHD and autism. In Wisconsin, where I'm from, all across the heartland, women are having more trouble getting pregnant. They're having troubled pregnancies and children with birth defects. So this is very serious. This is about our health. It's about our children. So we better make sure that we are doing this right and really taking action. So reading this report that came out today from the MAHA Commission was very exciting and very disappointing. I'll say it was exciting because it was honest that our policies are not protecting our health, especially for our children. It was honest that industry influence is enormous in Washington. It stated that the chemical manufacturing industry spent $77 million last year on lobbying, making them one of Washington's top spenders. And it was honest about this revolving door that we have between industry and agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency that's supposed to be protecting our health. But ultimately, this report indicates that they're not willing to take action. It repeats pesticide industry talking points, and there are 0 action items for actually restricting the use of harmful pesticides.
Zero?
0. The only action items in there are around science, increasing scientific research. None of that mentions pesticides by name. They mention some of the other problems raised in the report, but they are silent on pesticides when it comes to action items.
A lot of the studies we have around pesticides, for instance, being associated with infertility and things like that, are on animals. And so, we can't test them on humans, obviously, but we can show association. RFK Jr. has repeatedly called for better research, but I guess what you're saying is doesn't look like we're going to get that right now.
No, and we've got decades of research that show us that these chemicals are a problem. And so there's a few things here. Yes, a lot of our research is done on animals, but we know the National Academies of Science have said that humans are as sensitive, if not more sensitive, to these exposures than the animals that we're testing them on. So because obviously we can't knowingly expose people to chemicals that could be harmful, we test on animals. That's really critical research. But we also have a whole body of research that is on humans, looking at, for example, pregnant women and their exposures, and then tracking their children and see how they're doing. There's 2 really, really critical studies, one out of California called Chamacos, and a newer one in the Heartland called the Heartland Health Study. And what we see is women who have higher exposure to these pesticides when they're pregnant have more troubled pregnancies, and their children have more problematic health outcomes. So we have very strong data showing that this is a problem. And so saying, we need more data, we need to keep studying the problem is really a cop-out. What we need now, based on this mountain of research, is to take action to restrict these chemicals.
And so what the farmers would say is we absolutely need these in order to have this volume of production to feed the United States, because we have such a large population. And so, they treat them as this protected class, like we can't look at one next to the other. And so what you're saying is looking at any one will give us some clues, will it at least be better, right?
And, there's 2 very straightforward things that this report could have included as action items that would be voluntary for farmers, that would actually increase farmers' profitability while decreasing the use of harmful pesticides. One of those is a program under the USDA called NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service. And this is a set of advisors and programs who help farmers farm better, the folks who are on the ground who can help them reduce use of pesticides. And I've got a really sad example of the fact that NRCS has been slashed this year. So we were talking to a farmer in Alabama. He wants to shift away from factory farming to growing lettuce for local schools without pesticides. And when he went to his local NRCS office, sorry for the alphabet soup, 4 out of 5 of those employees are now gone. So the very people and programs that we need to help farmers get off that pesticide treadmill, we've lost. And another really straightforward action would be increasing spending for organic farming. These are farmers. This is a $70 billion industry that shows us it's possible to farm without these harmful pesticides. Over 900 pesticides are prohibited in organic farming. They're growing abundant food. They're growing healthy food for people, and it's a voluntary program. So this report could have said, we need expanded funding for organic.
Right. Yeah, it's so troubling. People in our chat room are saying, we're a Roundup nation, Roundup in everything. That's just that's one of the most famous
and isn't
chemicals.
A lot of that because we flood farm, because we water the weeds, so we need to kill them?
Yeah, so Roundup, a weed killer that many of us probably know, many of us probably have it in our garage. This is the most widely used agricultural chemical in the history of the world. Its use is so ubiquitous. It is found in the rain, it's found in creeks and rivers, and it's found in 80% of our bodies. Roundup has been linked to cancer, to increased risk of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, to hormone disruption, a whole set of reasons why it's really problematic. The increase in use of Roundup really shot up in the 90s when Monsanto began selling seeds to farmers that were genetically engineered to withstand Roundup. So previously, a farmer would never spray their field while their crops were growing because it would kill their crop. This is a weed killer, a plant killer, right? But with these genetically engineered seeds, farmers could spray during the season, spray multiple times, and use absolutely just dramatically shot up. So right now, those, go ahead, yeah.
No, I didn't mean it. I just was sighing.
Yeah. It's, I'll say this also, this myth that we need these chemicals to grow abundant food and to feed all people are not based on reality, because farmers are actually losing as much of their crop today to pests, to weeds and insects as they did in the 40s before the advent of this very chemical intensive agriculture. We are not winning the war against nature, right? Nature responds, weeds and insects develop resistance. Right now, farmers across the plains and the Midwest are increasing their use of really harmful herbicides because Roundup is no longer working. We've sprayed it so much that we've now got super weeds that have proliferated. Jeez. So now we're using 2,4-D. That's a chemical that is a component of Agent Orange, the Vietnam War defoliants.
Oh, fantastic.
Great.
We're increasing use of the Camba, really hazardous, antiquated chemicals. So this is not working. We need to get off the pesticide treadmill. This is really critical, not just for all of our health, but for farmers, right? They need the support that's going to help them transition because they're stuck. They're stuck in a system that really doesn't serve them either.
Dr. Kenda Klein, we really appreciate it. This is deeply troubling. Hope Bobby Kennedy, I know he knows this. I mean, he spent his career fighting this stuff. I mean, going back to his, fights in the Hudson River, he knows how detrimental these pollutants are. But just goes to show you, as you said at the beginning, how powerful these pesticide lobbies are in Washington, D.C. Doctor, great to see you. Thank you so much for fighting the good fight, and we'll continue to follow this story.
Thank you so much.
Deeply disturbing.
I mean, we didn't even talk about how it degrades the soil, how we need soil degradation.
I did mention at the beginning how in their letter, I specifically talked about the degradation, the poisoning of the soil.
Yeah.
So
were you familiar with in India, the use of pesticides? So there was only a certain seed that they could use, and it wouldn't regrow. So then, farmers had to use this pesticide-resistant seed. And then when they couldn't get it, there was a protest where farmers were actually drinking the pesticide in protest, as a suicide. No. This was a big thing in India. Yeah.
Jeez.
Oh, my God.
Because they basically put them out of business by the only way they could farm was using this pesticide then at that point.
So we do have studies of how they react to the human body.
Yeah,
oh, my God. That's horrible.
Someone in our chat room just asked if we read Silent Spring. Oh, yeah. I read that in college by Rachel Carlson about DDT and all of that. Yeah. Anyway, well, hopefully hopefully Bobby is on this. I mean, I don't know. It's just really deeply disturbing to see all of this. Okay. All right, we've got more news to get to here. We are going to talk about those 2 Israeli diplomats that were murdered in cold blood last night in Washington, D.C. It has now set off a firestorm. Benjamin Netanyahu now weighing in on this. A Republican member of Congress is calling for a nuclear bomb to be dropped on Gaza as a response to this attack. Is this
the man was not Palestinian?
Is this part of a false flag attack? All of that we're going to talk about, and what sort of a response should we all feel about that? We're going to talk about that next. But first, don't know if you've been looking at gold prices surging. Goldman Sachs out with the same experts who said that gold could reach $4,500 or more. Now they have they initially said it'd be $3,200. It passed that. Now they're saying $4,500 an ounce for gold. And I wonder if it has anything to do with our bond ratings being downgraded. Moody's now downgrading the United States because they just passed this big, beautiful spending bill, which is a debt bomb waiting to go off. It will further erode the United States dollar. $36 trillion in debt. We had Congressman Thomas Massey on the show yesterday who said $36 trillion is one thing. This adds another $20 trillion to our national debt over a number of years with the promise that Congress is going to get its act together 5 years from now. But of course, Republicans love spending. Democrats love spending. It's one big uniparty. So that's why we are big believers of making sure your family is protected and investing in precious metals. We are big believers of gold and silver. It's been around for 5,000 years as a store of value and a currency and the ability to protect families. And that's why we're big believers of it. Our friends at Lear Capital can actually help you learn how to invest in precious metals. You can have it sent right to your home. You can store it in your gun safe. Maybe you've got $1,000 in US dollars. Maybe you want to convert that over to silver or gold. They will help you do that. Maybe you've got an old IRA that's laying around or an old 401k. You can actually turn that into a self-directed IRA. We have a self-directed IRA. You can invest in anything you want, real estate, gold, silver. And the best part is Wall Street doesn't control it. You do. So those Wall Street fat cats aren't making money off of you. You get to control what you invest in. That's the beauty of a self-directed account. And they can help you get set up for free, by the way. They will help you set up that self-directed IRA for free. So call them today, 1-800-613-3557 to get your free guide on that 4,200 gold report and learn and ask these guys, how can I start investing in precious metals? Or just go to the website, LearRedacted.com. Again, their 800 number. They are an American company. They'll talk to you on the phone. Imagine that. 1-800-613-3557. Give them a call today. Well, last night, Washington, D.C. was the center of it all. 2 young Israeli diplomats gunned down, brutally murdered in cold blood outside the Capitol Jewish Museum. Here is that young couple, brutally killed, others wounded. This is Yaron Lashinsky, Sarah Milgram. Allegedly, this is the guy that pulled the trigger. His name is Elias Rodriguez. There he is. He's a known activist from Chicago. Police say he even told them where the weapon was. And while cameras were interestingly rolling on all of this, so cameras were rolling after this, he looked right at the camera and he said this, watch. That guy there was smiling, and it's good that they had the cameras ready to roll on this. As we speak, his social media accounts being scrubbed, hidden, but the internet, of course, is forever. Here is his Twitter account. At New Year's, he wrote, "Happy New Year, death to Israel." Former UN weapons inspector, U.S. Marine Scott Ritter wrote this on X, and I love this take. He said, "I will always oppose Israel's ongoing genocide against the people of Gaza, and I will continue to promote the cause of a free and independent Palestine. But I will never condone acts of political murder, whether on the soil of the United States or anywhere in the world. As such, I will never collaborate or cooperate with anyone who does not condemn the murder of 2 Israeli diplomats on American soil. America is the battleground of ideas, not a place for sick activists to commit crimes in support of a cause their actions pervert. It's my litmus test going forward. Condemn these murders, or don't be surprised when I condemn you and your cause. Because if you support political murder on American soil or anywhere else, your cause is death. And that will never help the people of Gaza or a free and independent Palestine."
And of course, anyone who really cares about the people of Gaza will know that this will make it so much worse for them.
Absolutely.
You know this.
And listen to New York Congressman Florida Congressman Randy Fine, who just was on Fox News saying that Gaza now needs to be nuked like Hiroshima, Nagasaki, essentially. Watch.
I don't have that clip. I'm getting it ready.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, All right, we'll play it later. Anyway, let's bring in former UN Weapons Inspector Scott Ritter, who wrote that great piece on X. And of course, that was a number of hours ago, Scott, that you wrote that. We've now heard from Benjamin Netanyahu. We've heard from members of Congress calling for Gaza to be blown off the face of the map with nuclear weapons. As expected, this has descended into absolute chaos. What do you make of this in the hours after you wrote that post?
Well, first of all, did we expect Benjamin Netanyahu to do anything differently? Did we expect the AIPAC-funded members of Congress to do anything differently? All this sick, criminally minded individual did is empower Israel and their Zionist supporters in the United States to, incite further aggression against the people of Gaza, to Palestinian people, and to double down on their attack against Palestine. This does not help Palestine. It does not help the people of Gaza. And for those people who feel empowered by this, shame on you. Shame on you, absolutely. If your empowerment comes through death, then you're in the wrong business. Don't pretend that you're a peace activist out there demonstrating for peace in Palestine when you worship death. At least be honest. Join the Marine Corps and go out and kill people for your country. Then we know who you are. I used to be a Marine, and that was my job. But I've walked away from that, and I recognize that for the most part, the solution to almost every problem in the world is peace. There are times when violence is necessary. Look, I continue to be a staunch advocate of what Hamas did on October 7th, not the individual acts of malicious murder that took place, but strategically, it was the greatest military raid in modern history, something that was overdue. Israel was laying siege to Gaza, committing massive crimes against the people of Gaza, and it only made sense that Hamas struck back. And I supported Hamas's cause during the 15 months of siege of Gaza, where Israel went in there and, committed genocide and committed horrific acts of violence. And I was somebody who said that Hamas has every right to defend itself and that they should defend themselves with vigor. And I supported Hezbollah's war of escalation against Israel to divert resources away from Gaza to help wear Israel down. I support Ansarallah and their continued blockade of Israel because Israel is a genocidal state committing horrific crimes against the people of Gaza. But what we're talking about here are acts of war. War is different. All right. War is waged by combatants against combatants, unless you're Israel, in which case you wage it against the innocent civilians of Gaza. But what we're talking about here is an act of political murder on the soil of the United States that's not related to the war. This is not, and I wouldn't support it if it was, but this isn't a Hamas insurgent infiltrating the United States for the sole purpose of taking out 2 Israeli diplomats. I would still condemn this because not on America. We're not your battleground, not your battleground for violence. We are a battleground of ideas. For all the people out there that condemn Israel, when you embrace this or you appear to condone this, all you do is denigrate yourself. All you do is show that you lack ideas. And I mean, if you can't come up with an idea that's better than genocide, then you're not much of an intellectual, are you? And that's the problem. These people out there who are condemning what Israel does, as I do, you lose all credibility. You become the world's greatest hypocrite the moment you endorse this. Israel will not be defeated by murder. Israel will be defeated by ideas. And Israel is being defeated by ideas. As we speak, the world is waking up to the horrific crimes carried out by the Israelis against the people of Gaza. You see France, Belgium, Canada coming together. You're going to see Europe rally around the cause of finally holding the Israeli government to account for the crimes they're committing in Gaza. This is what we should be supporting, is this kind of action. But the other thing I say to American activists is this. These demonstrations that you have where you protest Israel, and it's great, when you have people like this Rodriguez character say death to Israel, you're promoting this kind of violence. You need to purge yourself of the lexicon of violence. You need to absolutely ensure that nobody that is associated with your cause is promoting violence, especially political violence on the soil of the United States. You need to have better ideas, but even more than that, you need to have a better plan, because I'll just put it this way. If you've been demonstrating for the past several months, holding vigils, etc., how many Palestinian lives have you saved? And the answer is not a damn one. Not a damn one. All right? You know, I did a debate with Mr. Dershowitz, Alan Dershowitz. And you say that name in certain quarters and people spit. They get red in the face. They get purple in the face. He's a Zionist, an Israeli apologist. Yes, he's all of that. He's all of that. And I don't agree with almost anything he says about Israel. But we had a discussion about Israel, a debate. And I made a decision going in that I was going to be respectful, that this was going to be civil, and it was going to be fact-based. And not to my surprise, I didn't expect anything less from him. He behaved in a similar fashion. But what did surprise me is at the end, he said, you know, I've been doing these since October 7th. And this is the first time that somebody actually came here and engaged on the facts, engaged on the details without, you know, devolving into name calling, shouting down, etc. And it was productive. And I have to say it was productive, because as much as I disagree with Alan Dershowitz on Israel, we did find several points of agreement. And one of the areas of agreement we had is that the harm being done to the people, the citizens of Gaza, has to stop, that there has to be a way to, you know, save lives. Imagine if Alan Dershowitz and I got together and we created a forum of dialogue that tried to connect the pro-Palestinian activists in the United States with American decision makers, policymakers, with the Israeli embassy, not to change the policy, because that's not our job to negotiate an outcome to this, but to enact actions that saved lives, so that you could wake up in the morning and say, I saved 5 Palestinian children today. I saved 15 Palestinians today. I saved 20. You know, Oskar Schindler didn't save all the Jews in the Holocaust, but one by one, 2 by 2, he started to collect Jews that he kept out of the death camps. And in the end, the descendants of those Jews that he saved number in the thousands, and they're making meaningful contributions to the world. I'm not saying this should be everybody's objective, but I'm just saying that if this is something that people find attractive, and I do, and I actually had sent emails out to begin this kind of work, the people we need to talk to are the 2 people that were just murdered. You know, they were at an event where the issue of humanitarian assistance to the people of Palestine was being discussed. Now, you may not agree with their going-in position. You may not agree with anything he tweeted before. But what you have to know is this was the guy, the point of contact that needed to be reached out to, and a dialogue begun, a dialogue that could have led to Palestinian lives being saved. Instead of having some
being delivered,
Chicago activists gun these people down in the streets, and having all these people who claim to be people of peace saying this is needed, this is just, it's not. What are you doing to save the lives of Palestinian children? And my answer to every single one of the people out there who are promoting this act of murder is not only not a damn thing, but you're guaranteeing that hundreds, if not thousands of more, will be killed before this thing is done. So shame on you.
Right. If anything, more people will be killed by supporting this. Thousands.
Yes.
And now I think a lot of us wondering, is this going to be used as a cudgel, as, you know, to kill more?
Well, it has been already, because we see online people saying, if you've ever said free Palestine, you basically pulled the trigger. You're guilty of this.
Well,
Advocating
let me just say something to those people right now. I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah,
free
go ahead.
Palestine. Kiss my ass. Free Palestine. And you're accusing me of pulling the trigger. That shows how hypocritical you are. The cause of free Palestine is a just cause, and it cannot be tainted by the actions of this guy. But the people who behave the way they do taint that message. I believe in a free Palestine. I don't believe in
absolutely.
Do you think that this descends us into war with Iran?
No. I mean, do you want my honest opinion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People are
always.
We live in a social media age where people get outraged by the minute, by the second.
Yeah.
We won't be talking about this in a couple of weeks. We'll be talking about some other outrage. This is a tragic event. It's a horrible event. But in a couple of weeks, this will not be headline news. When this guy goes to trial, it might bubble up again. But the world is so full of outrageous acts that this will disappear as even more outrage is taken. But the more outrage that's going to take place is going to include Israeli strikes against Palestinian refugee camps that kill hundreds, if not thousands, of innocent Palestinians. So for all the people who sit there and believe that this somehow promoted their cause, all you did is kill. All you did is contribute to the deaths of more Palestinians. But I don't see this as triggering war or anything. It's a horrible event. It came at a lull in the news, but the news cycle is such that we'll find some other social media driven outrage in a week or so that'll make this disappear.
Well, it also came right at a moment when we're discussing, as you pointed out, getting aid into Gaza, and the international community outraged about the lack of food aid getting through these blockades. And so now we're not talking about that.
Nope, you're not. This is what I try to tell people all the time is, people kept saying, we need Hezbollah to attack Israel. And I said, no, you don't. You need the world to be focused on Gaza. You need the world to be focused on the plight of the Palestinian people. That's how we win this thing. When the world realizes what Israel is doing is so horrific that the world has no choice but to take action, then that's how you get victory. But if you expand this to include Hezbollah, or you expand this to include Iran, the last thing we talk about is Gaza, because the reality is Gaza is an insignificant slice of land on the map that has no meaningful geopolitical value, and it's populated by people that most of the world has long since abandoned, and the only thing that gives them relevance is the fact that they become the focal point of people who hate Israel. But how many people truly care about Gaza? How many people truly care about Palestine? I would say even many of the people in the streets, they care more about the act of protesting against Israel than they do about advancing the cause of Palestine. Because if you believed in advancing the cause of Palestine, you'd be working to save the lives of Palestinians, not promoting or condoning acts that are going to guarantee that more Palestinians die.
But you're familiar with the way that a government can sell a war. This is your specialty, right? Because you were one of the few who spoke out against the weapons of mass destruction lie that led to hundreds of thousands of deaths.
Millions.
And so what you can see, I'm sure, is that the more extreme Zionists, for instance, when the Pope says, my heart is hurting for the human suffering in Gaza, are saying, you need to focus on Jewish deaths. You need to focus on October 7th. You didn't say anything about those people, therefore you must hate them, therefore you're a liberal anti-Semitic Pope. That we are being asked by people with interests in this war to rank victims based on their nationality, which is a horrific thing to do. So we can be sad about the victims of October 7th and sad about the current victims in Gaza and sad about these two young innocent lives. And this ranking of people based on their nationality is an assault on our humanity, and it is how they are selling the war. Don't you think?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, the other thing about, trying to, say value, you didn't say anything about October 7th. I mean, I don't mean to be harsh here, but war is hell, and every war brings about with it collateral damage. And the civilians that died on October 7th, first of all, many of them, if not most of them, were killed by the Israeli military itself. In its various protocol, the Hannibal Directive and things of that nature. Even the Israelis now acknowledge this. So let's not do that. But I just want to bring up, in a sense of balance, we invaded Normandy in 1944. And before we went in over the beach, the Allies met with de Gaulle, who was the Free French leader, and said, we're going to be doing preparatory work, bombing, et cetera, and we could kill up to 60 to 80,000 French civilians. And they ended up killing, 20, 30, 40,000 French civilians. Whoever remembers their names today? The people, the family members that lost them, but there's no monuments. We have cemeteries for, thousands of American service members who died, but there are no cemeteries for the honoring the tens of thousands of, the French who died as a result of this war. There's a difference between civilians who die in war and civilians who are deliberately targeted and murdered. That's just the harsh reality. And I'm hard on the Palestinians because I say the only thing that gave the Hamas action on October 7th relevance is the fact that they lured Israel into Gaza so that Israel could be Israel. That the thing that will defeat Israel is Israel's behavior, but Israel had to be given an opportunity to put its behavior on display for the world. That the only way we get a Palestine is because of Israeli genocide, and the only way you get an Israeli genocide is by the Israelis slaughtering the people of Gaza. I mean, so even then you see that there's a warlike structure to these deaths. This is completely different than the murdering of 2 Israeli diplomats on the streets of Washington, D.C. And I just remind people, too, that I'm on a Mirotvorets hit list. I'm on several hit lists sponsored by the Ukrainian government. I've been actively targeted by Ukrainian intelligence who tried to kill me when I visited Russia. The Mirotvorets hit list just came active yesterday when Ukrainian intelligence operatives murdered a former aide to ousted Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych while he dropped his children off at school in Spain. They murdered him, put an X through his picture, and said, liquidated. I'm on that list. So, there's another reason why I don't condone political murder. And it's sort of selfish because to say, oh, yeah, go ahead, you can kill those guys because they're bad guys. Well, there's people that view me as a bad guy. And the next time I go to the Russian embassy for, Victory Day or Russia Day celebration, and I walk out, people can say, well, Scott Ritter is cavorting with the evil Russians. Pop, 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 pop. We killed him. I mean, if that's how we're going to have debates develop in the United States, then we are a nation of murderous imbeciles. As I said in my post, we're supposed to be the battleground of ideas. This is the nation where free speech empowers us to speak out, to say things, to talk, to argue, to debate, to have dialogue, discussion, and may the better idea win. The second you break down into political murder, what you're saying is you don't have any ideas. Your only idea comes from the power of a gun, and that's no idea at all.
Yeah.
Scott Ritter. Well, people can. I'd love to hear the interaction and have conversation with Scott on X because his profile is public. Real Scott Ritter on X, and and any questions you have. I mean, Scott's not afraid to have conversations with people, and we are not either. So please, reach out to Scott if you have any questions about all of this. Great insights as always, Scott. Great to see you. Thank you for joining us as always, and we appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Scott.
I mean, the minute you turn to saying we must punish groups for things, you've lost the mark, right? We are not, as humans, supposed to hold people collectively accountable for what any one person does or for what that's the cartel, right? Then they kill your family because of what this is not. I refuse to rank the victims here in terms of suffering, that Jews are suffering more than Palestinians or anything of the sort. And so, we're supposed to see these people as souls of God. I will not support war because of this. And, you can, I think we should all think about how hard it's being sold to us.
People in the chat saying, thanks, Scott. Others saying, I can't believe you let Scott say that. I'm not letting anyone say anything. We have a conversation about these topics. I think I'm going to control what Scott says about this. It's unbelievable. Anything you want to say about that?
That's what I wanted to say about that.
Okay.
No. And I thought about this a lot because, we all have this response to it because the war is teaching us to respond to people by groups, by nationality. And I feel horrible at that. And the way we sort of think when someone says I'm Russian and you're like, okay, because we are programmed to think of victors and losers and aggressors and not. And it's horrible. That's what we've been working on and Redacted to, against this Russophobia, against this anti-Semitism, against this anti-Muslim. There are no groups of people that are responsible for the horrible decisions of global governments right now. And I can't stand the way that I felt when we hear news like this. And so I took to X and I said that this war is a constant assault on our psyche, and I will not be told how to feel about people based on their nationality. I feel the same devastation about these 2 deaths in D.C. as I do about the deaths of civilians of Gaza. And I do about the deaths of civilians in Tel Aviv on October 7th. They were all somebody's baby, and their souls belong to the divine, and it does not now or will it ever motivate me to support any country's war. And that's my final say on it. And I will not have arguments online about which group is suffering more.
All right, we've got more news to get to here, and we're gonna hang out with our Rumble Premium folks here in just a second, and maybe talk about the Biden presidency. Maybe talk a little Walmart, because there's a boycott for Walmart.
Oh, yeah, we can talk about that.
We can talk about that. We can talk about a whole bunch of other things. But first,
we want to tell you about our show sponsor, which is Chapter. Because if you or someone you love is on Medicare or getting close, then listen up. The Department of Justice recently filed a massive fraud complaint against 3 of the largest Medicare brokers in the country. According to the DOJ, these brokers misled seniors, claiming to offer unbiased help while secretly steering them to an insurance plan that paid the highest kickbacks. It's disgusting and it's fraud, but let's be honest, it's not surprising. Medicare enrollment is confusing by design. Big insurance is taking advantage of yet another poorly run government system, and that's why we recommend Chapter. After their own families were misled by brokers, Chapter was able to found this system to fix the broken system. It is fully independent. They are the only national advisors that search every Medicare plan available to find the one that actually fits your needs. They advocate for you, not the insurance companies. No steering, no pressure, just ethical, honest help at no cost. So if you want help with Medicare, give Chapter a call by calling this number here on the screen. It's 202-655-5811, or go to askchapter.org/redacted. You'll talk to a real person who will help figure out exactly which plan is right for you. Chapter has saved the average senior over $1,000 a year, and they are a free resource for our audience. So again, give them a call at the number there on your screen, or go to askchapter.org/redacted. One more time, that's askchapter.org/redacted.
Well, our next guest wrote an incredible piece for the Daily Signal. I was sharing it with everyone that I knew. The author is Jarrett Stepman, and the piece is called "Biden's Presidency is a Scandal of Historic Proportions." Take a look at this. And in the piece, which you should all read for yourselves, he argues that because of Biden's incapacities, unelected officials and bureaucrats effectively ran the government, not Biden himself. And worse, they did it with media complicity. Meanwhile, overnight, Senator Ron Johnson launched an investigation into former President Biden's mental health. He says he sent letters to the former president's cabinet members requesting that they appear before my subcommittee for an interview about Biden's cognitive capabilities during his presidency. So let's unpack this historic scandal with the author of that piece, Jarrett Stepman. Jarrett, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. It's good to be with you.
So when you hear Ron Johnson overnight launching this investigation, where do you think he should be looking right now? What stood out to you in your research?
Yeah, I think that the most important thing is generally who behind the scenes was running things in the White House. There's speculation. Was it former President Barack Obama, who actually stayed in Washington, D.C. during, which was quite unprecedented, actually, a president staying behind in the nation's capital after his presidency? Suspicious, of course. Was it Jill Biden running things behind the scenes, much like Edith Wilson did for Woodrow Wilson at the very tail end of his presidency when he was incapacitated? Or was it some other kind of cabal very close to the president? Was it members of his cabinet? I mean, I think these are huge questions. I think a lot of the decision making is very clear that was being made by the agencies themselves. They're almost operating a sort of committee, a sort of oligarchy running the presidency, which is not how the executive branch should operate in any which way. And I do find it very interesting right now, as there are now books coming out. There are many in the legacy corporate media who are talking about going through and rewriting history about that era. they're not actually bringing up any names of people. They're explaining that the president was sick. He wasn't making big decisions, but there's a lot of names missing from that. And so I think they need to look at the cabinet members, those who are closest to him, advisors like Valerie Jarrett, who was very close to President Obama, was very clearly influencing Biden's circle. And I think they should start there. I do hope that Congress will be serious about this investigation, because I think the fact that 4 years in this country, we had basically no president at all, despite the fact that we were led to believe that he was elected by the American people, had a number of infirmities, not just mental, but physical. And I think that's a major scandal. I mean, what does it say? What does it say about how they think about the American people when they thought that they could get away with this all this time? I mean, it's incredible. As I said, I really do think it's one of the greatest scandals in American history. It's absolutely unprecedented what happened during this time, even beyond what happened with Woodrow Wilson years ago. That happened at the end of his presidency when he was sick, and the party pushed him out. This was a case of a party pushing him forward. They apparently wanted him in the White House in this position. I think that's where the real conspiracies get to, is why did the party want a man who was out of his wits this whole time? And I think that's the important story here.
Have you ever seen the movie Dave?
I have not.
Okay,
Kevin Kline.
because this is literally the plot of that movie, is that the president's incapacitated, his chief of staff is ambitious and wants to run the country, so they get a doppelganger. And they know, meanwhile, that you should watch this movie. Make this your weekend homework.
I will.
And my children loved it, by the way. It's got like 90. I'm going on a tangent. The point is that there were deliberate people who knew that they were breaking about a dozen laws by doing this. And so what we can be led to wonder is who benefited from the president being incapacitated, who might have done this on purpose. Now, we saw in the New Yorker piece that Jake Tapper wrote that Senator Chuck Schumer said, well, we've got a plan B if he can't run forward. So that's very damning that there were puppet masters. And so I really would like a special counsel on this. I really would like, if somebody was deliberately breaking the law, for them to be held accountable. What do you think the likelihood is of this?
I think there's some likelihood. I never try to put too much faith into Congress to do anything on these matters, despite the seriousness of these accusations. I think there are a lot of interests, especially within the Democrat Party, to just wipe their hands of this, to say, well, mea culpa, I guess the president was really sick. Now let's move on. But this really isn't about Biden. I mean, it can't be about Biden. It's very clear now that this was not a man who couldn't make big national decisions. It sounds like he couldn't even make small personal decisions in his life. So we really can't hold him accountable because he was too far gone during his presidency. So it really is an entire party, an entire apparatus that kept this man in place and now wants to put all their blame on that man when really they need to look in the mirror. And so I'm a little bit dubious about whether Congress is going to get their act together, where the Republicans in Congress are going to be able to actually go back and get to the truth of this matter. We've heard this story before, but it needs to happen. I think President Trump would certainly want to be involved. He's been very serious about this. And I do think that the country needs to know what happened during that time. I mean, there were a lot of major decisions that were happening within our government that have had major consequences, and we don't know who made those decisions.
Well, you also talk about the complicity of the media, and I think that's so important here, because I'd love to know, through an investigation, were they told to hide this? I'm reminded of what was the president? Was it Grover Cleveland who had a piece of his mouth taken out? And that's Yes. Grover Cleveland famously over the July 4th weekend disappeared, right? And the press was kind of like shoved away, and no, don't ask questions where the president is. He's just kind of like, yeah, he's on like 4th of July holiday. He's on a boat. Just that's all you need to know. Well, one intrepid reporter wouldn't let it go and found out that he actually had a secret surgery, like his mouth was full of cancer. He could have died. And they ruined this journalist's career. It wasn't until like 20 years later they finally like apologized, but I think he had already died. His life was ruined at that point. I'm forgetting my history here a little bit, but so if the media was complicit here, I would love to know, like, were there emails sent, were there phone calls sent, were there specifics told to CNN or Jake Tapper or these other individuals, like, here's what really is going on. You can't say anything about it. You're part of this process. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, and how many members of the elite media have been very involved in Democrat politics, have been involved in the Obama White House? I mean, do we really think that Joe Scarborough didn't know when he was making those statements about how this is the best Biden's ever been? I mean, I don't believe for a second those around the president didn't know about this. I mean, they did. I mean, unless they're literally, I mean, maybe some of them are the dumbest people in America, but I think that's why this was such a difficult scandal to pull off, because this wasn't just a single weekend when the president secretly goes out to a boat. You know, this wasn't even just a few months. This was a very obvious thing over the course of many, many years. And despite their attempts to try to make the president seem sort of normal, it wasn't working, and you didn't need to be an elite media member to know that. You knew something was up, something was wrong. And the fact is, these people who apparently have such access to the White House couldn't figure this out until this disastrous debate that he had with Trump, where it became just so obvious that the credibility threshold, they just simply couldn't cross. They said, well, I guess he really is sick. That really doesn't strike as true to me. And I think for most Americans, that just doesn't strike as true. And I think that right now, they're doing a cleaning up operation. They're trying to make it seem like somehow they were snookered by maybe a couple of White House aides that they didn't know. And this is just a little bit, a minor scandal of a president who was senile, and let's give him some time away because isn't it sad he has cancer? Look, it is very sad he has cancer, but that can't make the story go away, because if they're going to lie about something like this and distort the truth, how many other stories have been distortions? This was one of epic proportions over a course of 4 years in the White House, potentially much more. Were they going to go another 4 years and make excuses for this president? Were we going to allow this country to have a president who had advanced stage cancer to be in the White House, keeping the seat warm for the vice president who they maybe expected who couldn't actually get elected? These are very troubling things. And again, it goes to, how could we have a presidency where a man is just incapable of even basic decisions about his life? I mean, that's not what the chief executive is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a council. It's not supposed to be run by millions of bureaucrats. And that's a real distortion of our small R Republican form of government that they try to get away with. Now,
if you studied the career of Joe Biden, I think one of the saddest things is this is not the presidency that he would have had he been elected when he was of sound mind. Clearly, he was a completely different politician. So we're left to ask ourselves, were the inmates running the asylum? Is this something that just happens when there's no leader? Or, was this on purpose, the 4 years of hell that we all had?
I do think it was on purpose. I think they wanted to pursue their policy agenda. I think there were many actors in play that wanted to push that. They saw Biden as their potential way to get into the White House, to get into power. They thought the party essentially could take things from there. But, we saw around the world a lot of crises opening up because there were no decision makers. The buck was basically stopping nowhere. I think that's why when you have governments basically by committee, I think that things really do break down. It's the reason why the founders included the presidency in the Constitution, because of, for instance, the experience in the American Revolution, where you need a real commander in chief, especially in time of crisis, who can make specific decisions, especially in foreign policy. Instead, what you had is various factions within the White House trying to force through their pet policies on the country, especially in a time of crisis in the country. We had lockdowns around the country. We had COVID, and a lot of radical things were being pushed through the executive branch with very little accountability from the White House. I think especially about, the war that happened between Russia and Ukraine. It seemed like the buck stopped nowhere. There was no larger strategy. Things were just going on based on the whims of generals. And that's not how foreign policy should be done. That's how a lot of bad decisions are made. And that's how big wars start, when there is no accountability to the commander in chief. And that was the real scare. I guess we're lucky that we didn't end up in a really big war, but clearly there have been crises that open up around the globe I think there's quite a contrast between what was happening then and now under the president of Donald Trump, who's a highly energetic executive. Actually, I think is much more in line with what was intended for that office. So a lot of scary stuff happened during that time because I think people wanted to push their pet policies on the country, and that was what it was all about.
Yeah, I'll get you out of here on this, Jarrett, which is I can't help but thinking, like you mentioned, well, the war, you bring up a great point. You have this coup essentially in Syria, which by all accounts is a CIA MI6 run coup. So who called the shots there? Was it President Biden or someone else that said, yeah, that's fine. Here's this guy, Jolani, just that's fine. He's
as good as any.
He's as good as any. Like, does he call the shots? Then you've got the auto pen issue, all these pardons with this auto pen. And you've got billions of dollars in the last few weeks being shoveled out of the White House through all of these programs, like all of this hush money. It seems like money laundering stuff like flowing all over the place. He didn't have, it seems like, according to your reporting, he had nothing to do with any of it. He was totally out to lunch.
No, and a lot of reports are very clear. He didn't even know the policies that his own administration was pursuing. There have been a lot of reports of him talking with other leaders and them complaining about certain policies of his administration. He's basically saying, "What? I don't know what you're speaking about." He literally had no idea the policies, his own policies. I mean, this is again, you listen to other leaders, you expect them to be sharper than usual, not somebody who needs to be led around by aides. But that's what we saw during these years. And again, especially on the strategic thought globally. I mean, where real decisions have to be made that there could be profound consequences. You talk about Syria or Ukraine, the Middle East. What are we doing about China? Things were just not happening, or they were happening on autopilot. They were allowing essentially the various agencies to continue their prerogatives. That's an incredibly dangerous thing. I think we're actually fortunate that things weren't worse during this time. I can only imagine if we had another 4 years. I mean, who knows, how long Biden could have actually lasted in the presidency. And I find it incredible that even during that whole time, especially they talked about the 25th Amendment in regard to President Donald Trump, how all talk of that went away. And they were seemingly afraid to do anything. They were afraid to actually remove the president who was incapacitated. So again, I think the reason is because they wanted to keep him like that. They wanted to keep the country in a sort of limbo, and they wanted to keep Biden in the White House because ultimately he would just sign off on whatever they did. And again, deeply troubling. And I think the media was complicit. It couldn't be more clear now, looking back.
Yeah. Well, you need to watch the movie, Dave. I'm telling you, you're going to enjoy it. Yeah, it's a great film.
He needs to watch Dave, and then our viewers need to read Jarrett's piece on the Daily Signal. It's a great piece. It's called Biden's Presidency is a Scandal of Historic Proportions.
Yeah,
Go and read
there's also a media bit. I can't believe how much this film mirrors life, because there's a part where I think it's Oliver Stone is saying something's amiss with this president, and the media is calling him crazy.
Right.
In the film.
Oliver Stone is in the movie.
It is art predicting life. I can't say it enough. And I want to hear from you after you do.
It's like
because you're gonna love it.
It's like the Simpsons.
I'll watch it.
Yeah.
Sounds perfect.
Jared, have a great weekend. Thank you for joining us. It's a great piece, and I appreciate it. We'd love to have you back.
Thank you both.
You were
Thank you
great.
very much.
We appreciate it. Thanks, Jared.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's going to pretty much do it for us here on this Thursday, but we're going to hang out with our Rumble Premium subscribers, as I mentioned earlier, off the top of the show. Again, the whole show is free, but we do this on Thursdays. Come on over to Rumble, and can we put the Rumble Premium link up there on the screen? I think if we have it, you get $10 off or something like that in supporting free speech. Okay. I think, what is it called? Rumble.com/redacted. But yeah, go there. And if you sign up, you get a savings as well. And it's a way to support free speech. Of course, Rumble is a free speech platform. We, in a couple of the topics we talked about today on COVID and the wars, we've definitely been shadow banned and blocked, and other channels that try to talk about COVID or any of the things that these subjects that we talk about here on the show, many of them get banned and blocked on these different social media platforms, and Rumble has been exceptional in supporting free speech. So we want to support them on Thursdays and hang out for a little bit and just kind of chit chat if we can. So come on over, rumble.com/redacted, support free speech, and let's hang out with our Rumble Premium subscribers today.
All right. And if you're not coming, Again, we don't have a show on Monday. It's Memorial Day here in the United States, and we will see you on Tuesday. We will have content throughout the weekend, so stay tuned. Bye, everyone. Happy Memorial Day.
All right. Hey, Rumble Premium folks. Good to see you all today. What a fiery show. What a fiery show.